You ever notice how you keep ending up in the same situations? Different year, different people, but somehow the same story. The same kind of relationship that drains you? The same career moves that leave you unfulfilled? Same conflicts with different faces? It's like you're walking in circles, and the worst part is, you know it. You promise yourself this time will be different, and yet here you are again. So what's going on? Why do we keep gravitating toward the same patterns even when they hurt us? More importantly, how do we actually break free? Let me tell you something that might sound strange. Your brain loves patterns. Actually, it's obsessed with them and needs them to function. Every single day, your brain processes thousands of pieces of information. What's safe? What's dangerous? What requires attention? What can be ignored? If your brain had to consciously evaluate every single decision from scratch, you'd be paralyzed. So your brain creates shortcuts, patterns, it says. Okay, this situation looks like that situation from before, so I already know how to respond. Pattern recognized, action initiated, move on. This is why you can drive home without remembering the journey. This is why you can have entire conversations on autopilot. Your brain has seen this before. It knows the script, so it just runs the program. And this is incredibly useful, till it isn't. Because the same mechanism that helps you function efficiently is the same one that keeps you trapped. Your brain doesn't distinguish between helpful patterns and harmful ones. It just recognizes familiarity. But you grew up in a household where love was conditional, where you had to perform to receive affection. Your brain learned a pattern. Love equals performance. Now you're 30 years old and you keep finding yourself in relationships where you're exhausted, always trying to prove your worth. Different partners, same dynamic. Or maybe you learned early on that speaking up leads to conflict, that it's safer to stay small. So now, decades later, you're still shrinking yourself, still swallowing your opinions, still wondering why you feel invisible. These aren't conscious choices. These patterns operate below the level of awareness. They're so deeply embedded that they feel like reality itself. Here's where it gets really interesting. Your brain doesn't just recognize these patterns, it seeks them out. It finds them comfortable. I know that sounds insane. How can something that makes you miserable be comfortable? But comfort doesn't mean happy. Comfort means familiar, known, predictable. There's a concept in psychology called the compulsion to repeat. Freud talked about it. We unconsciously recreate familiar emotional landscapes, even painful ones, because at least we know the terrain. The unknown, even if it's potentially better, triggers anxiety. Your nervous system reads novelty as danger. So it pulls you back toward what it recognizes, even if what it recognizes is suffering. Think about someone who grows up in chaos, constant drama, instability, crisis. That becomes their normal. So when they find themselves in a peaceful situation, it doesn't feel like relief. It feels wrong. It feels boring. So unconsciously, they create chaos. They pick a fight. They sabotage the stability because now things feel right again. That's the pattern running the show. So how do we break this? Starts with one thing: awareness. You cannot change what you cannot see. As long as these patterns are operating in the dark, they own you. But the moment you shine a light on them, you create space. Space between stimulus and response. Space where choice lives. Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. Not because examination makes you happy, but because it makes you free. Free to choose rather than simply react. So the first step is pattern recognition. You need to catch yourself in the act. Notice when you're falling into the familiar groove. Notice the sensations in your body, the thoughts in your mind, the impulse to do what you've always done. And if you're looking for a structured way to develop this kind of self-awareness, I've put together an ebook called Philosophy for Busy People. It distills these big philosophical concepts into practical tools you can actually use, including exercises for recognizing and interrupting unconscious patterns. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check it out. But awareness alone isn't always enough. You need the second key. The second key is disruption. Intentional pattern interruption. Your brain runs on neural pathways. Think of them like trails in a forest. The more you walk a particular trail, the more defined it becomes. Eventually, it's the path of least resistance. Breaking a pattern means forging a new trail. And at first, it's hard. The new path is overgrown, unclear, uncomfortable. The old path is right there, wide and easy. So you need to disrupt. You need to catch yourself at the moment of choice and do something different. anything different. If your pattern is people-pleasing, and someone asks you to do something you don't want to do, you feel that familiar pull to say yes. That's the moment. That's the fork in the road. And you have to pause, take a breath, and say, let me think about that and get back to you. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to do something other than the automatic response. But here's where it goes even deeper. Sometimes these patterns aren't just habits. They're identity. Who would you be without your suffering, without your struggle, without the story you've been telling about yourself for decades? We build entire identities around our patterns. I'm the responsible one. I'm the victim. I'm the one who always fails at relationships. These aren't just descriptions. They're roles. Where breaking the pattern means stepping out of character. It means rewriting the script. The philosopher Alan Watts talked about this. He said we cling to our problems because solving them would mean admitting we could have solved them before. It would mean taking responsibility. So part of breaking patterns is asking yourself, who am I protecting by staying stuck? What do I gain from this? What familiar role am I refusing to abandon? So here's what it looks like in practice. Breaking patterns is a three-part process. First, recognition. You notice the pattern. You see it clearly. Second, disruption. You catch yourself at the choice point and do something different, even if it's small. Third, reinforcement. You acknowledge the new behavior. You notice how it felt. You celebrate that you did something different. And you repeat. Because the old neural pathway doesn't disappear overnight. But every time you take the new path, it gets a little clearer. And the old path gets a little more overgrown. Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not an act, but a habit. The same is true for change. You don't break a pattern with one heroic moment. You break it with 1,000 small choices accumulated over time. So here's what I want you to take from this. Your patterns are not your destiny. The fact that you've repeated the same story 100 times doesn't mean you have to repeat it 101. But you have to see them. You have to be willing to observe yourself honestly. You have to be willing to disrupt, to step off the familiar path, even when every instinct screams at you to stay. And you have to be patient with yourself, because the alternative is spending your entire life walking in circles, wondering why the scenery never changes. You deserve more than that. You deserve a life that's actually yours. It's not one dictated by patterns you didn't choose, by scripts written before you could even speak. You deserve to break free. And now you know it's possible. If this video resonated with you, let me know in the comments. What pattern are you ready to break? And if you found this helpful, subscribe, because we go deep on this kind of stuff regularly. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.